Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my guide to the Ghimlyt Dark, a new dungeon accessible via the patch 4.5 main scenario quest. It is the final 4-player dungeon of Stormblood, with a minimum item level of 360 to enter, and rewards item level 375 armor. The dungeon is broken up into the usual trash pulls and 3 bosses. To skip to a specific boss, please use the timestamps in the description of the video. The trash packs throughout the entire dungeon should all be pretty familiar to you by now, as we've been facing off against Garleans for a while. Several bosses from Alamigo and the Castrum dungeons make reappearances as trash mobs here and should pose no greater threat to you than normal. On the final trash pack before the final boss, you do get the pleasure of seeing one of the various NPCs assisting you throughout the dungeon use an LB3 on an Iron Colossus. Hien, Lys, and Yugiri all seem to be the ones who can do this. Anyway, since the trash is largely inconsequential here, even in larger pulls, we'll be focusing on the bosses. The first boss is Mark 3B Magitech Colossus, but we'll just call him Mark. He is an Iron Colossus with a number of standard attacks. Jarring Blow is a cleaving tank buster to face away from the party, and Wildfire Beam is a bunch of damage markers that players need to spread out from each other. He has a bunch of wide line AoEs and a room-wide AoE with Cerulean Vent, all of which he will use more frequently as he loses health. His only real mechanic is Magitech Slash. This does 6 conal AoEs back to back in a rotating fashion. You basically just look at what direction the rotating AoE is going and go to where the 6th AoE would land. As soon as the AoE where the first slash hit disappears, you move into your new safe zone. Later in the fight he can do this attack back to back, and they can rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. Pretty much all that changes in the later part of the fight is he spits out abilities more often. So just don't die and you win. Easy. The second boss is Prometheus. This fight is also fairly straightforward. The huge arena will be shrunk down to a more reasonable size as soon as he uses Nitro Spin for the first time, so stay out of all that fire. Nitro Spin after that is just room-wide AoE damage. Unbreakable Sermon Drill is simply a tank buster, so mitigate it. And then he has 2 AoEs, Needle Gun, which fires a cone AoE in front of Prometheus, and Oil Shower, which hits in a 270 degree AoE from the boss's rear. These 2 are often used back to back, so be ready to dodge either or both of them. Prometheus' main mechanic is Heat Drill. It will burrow underground and reposition itself inside of one of the stone cliffs surrounding the arena. You can find the location that it's going to be attacking from by looking around for a giant heat patch forming in the cliffside. Eventually, the heat breaks through and fires a persistent heat laser through the middle of the arena. Don't just avoid the initial hit, just don't stand in the effect at all, as a few ticks of it can kill any of the non-tanks pretty quickly. Later in the fight, Prometheus will use freeze missiles prior to Heat Drill. There are 4 proximity AoEs along the outside of the usable part of the arena. You can stand between 2 of them or all stacked dead center, just don't stand too close to any particular proximity AoE. Once these hit, you should immediately dodge Heat Drill wherever it's coming from. Use the time while you're looking at the freeze missiles to also look for Heat Drill. Do those 2 things on top of the non-Heat Drill attacks and you're done with this boss. With that, we're going to move on to the final boss. This simply consists of the 2 Sorinus twins. At first you'll fight Anya, while Julia attacks from the outside of the arena, comboing their attacks together. Anya's tank buster is Delta Trance, so mitigate that, and Artificial Plasma is a room-wide AoE, so heal that. Anya may also jump to players and do Stunning Sweep, a point-blank AoE that you should just avoid. Julia, on the other hand, will mostly just shoot players with targeted attacks. Most basically, it's just a single gunshot, but when Anya orders Julia to bombard the team, she will target each player with a line AoE that knocks them back. Avoid overlapping these with other players, and be sure to use knockback prevention if you have it. 4 AoEs will hit the arena at the same time you get knocked back by this, so make sure you don't get knocked back into any of those circular AoEs. Anya will also aim a line AoE at the players during this, so avoid being hit by that as well. Julia's only other attack from the outside is shooting line AoEs through the room, so DPS Anya down to 0 and they'll begin a tag team attack. This is just a ton of line AoEs designated by thin target lines that might be a little hard to see scattered throughout the arena. Just don't stand near any of them and you're good. Once that attack is done, Julia tags in for Anya, while Anya now supports from the outside. Julia's tank buster is called Innocence, but it's functionally the same exact thing as Anya's. When Julia uses Commence Airstrike, Anya drops several ceruleum canisters along the arena. Julia then knocks back one or several, while also picking one to fire at. That one will explode and cause a chain reaction of large AoEs that can be sometimes hard to avoid. If they make a perfect circle, the center of the room should be safe. Otherwise, usually the opposite side of the first explosion is pretty safe. Being hit by 1 doesn't really hurt all that much, so just ensure you don't get hit by 2 or more, and avoid any other AoEs at the same time, and it's no problem. There are sometimes line AoEs going through the arena, so just dodge those. Julia can also aim for line AoEs towards the outside of the arena, while Anya bombards you with circular AoEs. Just dodge everything, you've done this before. Once Julia is defeated, they'll do the same tag team attack again, though this time the players each have a spread damage marker that is fairly large. Spread out while dodging the line AoEs at the same time. Finally, Anya and Julia will begin casting Imperial Authority, which will wipe the party if it finishes casting. Odds are you'll almost never see this cast finish, because it takes so long for it to actually cast, and you only have to take out 20% of their max HP before it finishes. Multi-hit LBs practically eliminate them as is, so burn them down and you're done. It's probably going to be a relief to some people that this dungeon isn't nearly as rough as the burn was for a lot of people, so enjoy the loot. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for more upcoming 4.5 guides, especially the new 24-man guide, soon. Until next time, everyone, take care.